Hello friends, welcome back. Today I want to start with a lucid dream that I've had in the last 10 years. And it was about this great migration, which I'm going to talk about today, where we are moving, a lot of us, to new worlds, and we need to be preparing our children because there is a large amount of our children that will be going. And so in this lucid dream I had within the last 10 years, because I began to know about Great Migration in about 2010. I was in a park in a city, and there were people walking all around the streets, up and down it was almost like a downtown area. So there were people coming and going and cars coming and going, and there was this like city park. And I was standing in this city park, and in the park there were some other people, various other people in the park. And the heavens, for lack of another word, the heavens opened up, and these male figures began to descend from the sky, and they were very muscular in build and were sort of a brown skin and had a loincloth and had beautiful radiant eyes and muscular. They just had this loincloth on, so all their muscles were very defined. And they began to descend down, and when I looked up, one of these male beings reached his hand to me, and I reached up and I took his hand, and I began to start to move off the ground because now he was going back up. He had come down, now he's going back up. And then I saw a woman with 2 children, and I reached out to her. And she came running, well, not running, but very hurriedly came over with her 2 children. And she grabbed my hand, and she grabbed her child, and the other child grabbed that child. And they began to rise with me. And then I could see, as we were rising up into the air, you could call this an ascension, a rapture, or a harvest. But the words I was given by the guidance and the beings I'm working with was migration. So when you could see, as we were moving up into the sky, there were these other male beings also had done the same thing. They had descended, and they were picking up specific people. These people knew spontaneously to hold on to them. Now, no one else, many other people in the city did not see this. Cars kept coming and going. People on the sidewalk directly across from the park kept walking by. No one witnessed this. This was only a specific event for specific people. And the rest of the world just went on their way. So that was a lucid dream I had because I was totally conscious of what was happening. I was aware of that I was in a created reality, not necessarily in a real physical city, but a created reality to show me what it would be like. And of course, it's not going to be this way literally, so don't take it literally that, we're all going to be standing in a park and suddenly beings are coming down and we're going to be lifted up into the sky. We don't want to take that as a literal thing. What we want to take it as is that there are going to be certain ones of spiritual people who will be involved in this great migration, which I spoke about in the last video, and I'll put a link to the recent video. This is going to be like a 2-part series because we're going to focus on children primarily in this discussion. And I'm going to give an overview of sort of our role and the children that are coming behind us. And then in part 2, I'm going to drill in deeper into our specific spiritual skills. And you'll be able to leave comments below in this video, questions you may have or skills you may want to ask about, which will be covered in the next video. So today I wanted to talk about this migration. We, as I had said in the last video, we are the transition team. We are to prepare the way, and this particular pandemic, this slowing down and restart of civilization is designed to have given us as spiritual warriors, I like to say, as spiritual people, is given us a chance to recenter, regroup, reground, refocus, and really hone in on what we're going to do now once we restart civilization and get it going, because it's not going to be like it was before, friends. Even if we do nothing to change our lives have been changed. So, you know, many businesses are going out of business. Many people are going to be unemployed. It's going to be a slow process, and there's going to be a lot of changes in the way we work, stay at home, working from home, many things like that. So life will be different, but what's important is, like I spoke in last video, is that we start to move on this separate path that's moving along with most of humanity, but we're moving down a path of preparation for this migration. And on this path, we're moving to train our children and grandchildren. These are the future of humanity, because I also mentioned there is a new life form that is coming to the earth, or will emerge on the earth. And it's going to change the whole face of the earth. I've had one or two videos about that. So this is not a negative thing, friends. If you understand the history of this planet, this history has had civilizations that have risen and disappeared, and risen and disappeared, and risen and disappeared. And so it is, we are one of those pioneering planets where experiments are put in place, a time cell is put in place, and this experiment runs for a period of time, and then there is like a harvest or a migration of those kinds of avatars that have achieved a certain level of spiritual mastery, and then a new program begins. So to go back to this discussion, we have to start mastering our spiritual skills. And I have many videos on that, on our spiritual gifts and talents. And now I want to focus on children for the moment, because they are primarily our future, because those of us who are older, we're the transition team, and there will be some of us going ahead in this migration, but there's going to be a large migration, and they're going to be our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. There's going to be a larger migration coming, because those children will be ready. If we train them right, if we help them, and we don't just give up on them and just let them run with the crowd of the world, we can't do this. This is the change that has to happen now. Ideally, if you can homeschool, that is the best alternative. And I know not a lot of people can do that, but homeschooling is the best alternative, because you do have to give them tools of the world. But along with that, you can give them all their spiritual skills. And so maybe another alternative might be some sort of homeschooling that involves a group of friends where the teachers rotate, and so you don't have to be the whole homeschooler. Maybe you can work part-time or something, and you can get a group going, and you can rotate it, and the children can be in a group. So it's not just one child at home or two children at home. Maybe there's a group of 4 or 5 or something like that. So there is a group environment for the children. So with all these new stay-at-home ideas and all these new ideas that are going to be manifesting in the future, it is possible for us to create some kind of stay-at-home or group organization where children can have more spiritual skills given to them. You're never going to get them in public school. Or any kind of private school, that we know of today. If you put them in those schools, which I realize some people will have to, then when they get home, when you've been working all day and you're tired, you want to cook, you want to let the kids watch TV or play on their iPad or do their homework, you have to spend time developing their spiritual skills. It's the end of the day. How much of that are you going to get done? Depends on, how determined you are to focus that whole end of the day on developing spiritual skills, and or waking them up at 5 in the morning and starting then before they go to school. So this is going to have to be worked out. And spiritual skills can start with being when they're in the womb, before you've given birth. You can start sitting in the sacred fire. I have videos on that. And when you meditate in the sacred fire, you make sure that you send a conscious signal to your child that they are also meditating in the sacred fire. Because remember, we have to clean out our lineage on both sides of our family, because all that negative stuff comes in when we're born. We're dumped with a lot of our lineage. There's good things in our lineage, but there's a whole lot of dark stuff in our lineage, and we're covered with that, and we're covered with all the programming of the world. And you know, we have to get our children out from under all of this so they can start to be the adepts of the future. So start with meditating in the sacred fire when you're pregnant, and start meditating when you're feeding your baby. Sit in the sacred fire. When you're sitting with your child, sit in the sacred fire. Start teaching your child to sit still for 5 minutes in the fire. And I'm not talking about timeouts, and I'm not talking about sitting still coloring or thing like that. They need to be taught to quiet their mind and their emotions, totally quiet, for 5 minutes. They have to start training their monkey mind, and they do have a wonderful curiosity at that time. And children are highly connected to their divine blueprint, so they're getting information. They know what they want. They know how to get information. It's us as adults that squash it all, and we retrain them, and we polarize them so they lose all of their creativity and inner knowing with their divine blueprint, with their higher self, because we want to discipline them for misbehaving because they are annoying us, because we've had a hard day at work. We're going to have to start mastering ourselves, in other words, to help our children. So remember, when children are very young, they are connected to their divine blueprint. They know what they want and don't want. And so when a child is resistant to something in the early ages, you need to focus on, there's a deeper reason why this child is not resonating with something. It's not just, I'm throwing a temper tantrum. There's something going on that they have an inner knowing about. So parents are going to have to start mastering these spiritual skills themselves, so that they are in tune with their children. Because what's been happening is children come in awake, tuned in to their blueprint, to higher consciousness, and the parents are totally scattered, totally asleep, and totally disconnected, and they can't relate to what's really going on with their child in order to help them do anything spiritually. So we have to master our spiritual skills so we're in tune with them. And so, you know, of course you can work on creativity and arts and those kind of things which have been taken out of the schools. You can work with music, you can work with art, and there is a part of spiritual skills that is developing that creative outlet. But one of the things we need to do is start talking to them about their dreams, and talking to them in the mornings or talking to them at night when they wake up with something going on. Really discuss it with them. Really honor what they've experienced, and write it down in a journal, and get a journal for my child, like put their name on it, and you write down their experiences. And when they get a little bit older, you help them by giving them a journal, and they can interpret it, their own experiences in their own way, and write them down. And if you're sharing, when you share, you will get their explanation of their lucid dreamings or astral travels. You write them in your own child's journal. They write in their journal. And now you have your adult understanding of it, and you have the child's instant feeling of it. And these will, because remember, guidance comes from lucid dreaming and astral traveling, and later bilocation and transferring your consciousness into higher bodies. I have lots of videos on that. So this is some of the things we can begin to do. Work with them in their dreams, honor their dreams, support them in their any kind of, even if they're not dreaming and they start to pick up on something in the room, something doesn't feel right, or something feels good, or they run off to something and they're focused on something. You know, honor these things and begin to allow them to start developing their own precognition, their own premonitions. They can get visions and knowings of the future easily if you don't squash it. They can talk, they can have telepathy. I mean, when children are born, they have telepathy. And so if they're talking to themselves, this is telling you they're in communication with someone. So starting to work with these spiritual skills is going to help them become more adept as they get older and older. And if we can keep them in a private school, when I say private, I mean homeschool group, or just you with your children, but it would be good to have 2 or 3 people in your area or the neighborhood or within your city all getting together a couple of times a week for the same homeschooling. If you can keep them that way through high school, then when they do have to go to college, they're going to have more of a firm foundation of their spiritual skills. Because what you want to develop ourselves and our children is a keen intellect and high intuition or inner knowing. So we want these children, by the time they're moving into college level, to have already moved through disciple. And they're now going to be going into college where it's initiate. They're going to be testing that outer information they get with all the inner training and skills you have given them before they went to school, to college. So in initiate level, we have outer world information, testing it to our inner world knowing. And there's like this little bit of a battle. We're mastering it. Well, is this outer information, does that resonate with what I know inside of me? Because what has happened to most of us as adults, we get outside information. This is disciple level and aspirant level. And we begin to validate all these authority figures as knowing more about what's good for us than we do. So we give up our power and we give up that inner knowing to some, person who looks like they have either PhDs out the wazoo or MDs, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, or they're in some high, government figure or whatever. We surrender our power. And we oftentimes, I've said this before, one of the biggest mistakes spiritual people do is they betray their own higher self. They betray their own God self. They betray their own inner knowing. This happens constantly with spiritual people. You're constantly betraying yourself. You get that intuitive hit. You even get premonitions, and you know what's the right thing, but yet you surrender to your mate or to your work person, your boss, or some outer form. You surrender to it. So in initiate level, we work that battle. We are aware of that battle. In aspirant and disciple, you just lost with that. You're constantly surrendering, and then you're unhappy, and you don't know why. You don't feel satisfied, fulfilled, and joyful in life because you keep giving your power away, keep surrendering your inner knowing. So in initiate level, you know your inner knowing, and now you're testing your inner knowing with the outer world. So when something doesn't feel right, you go, I'm going to stay neutral on that. And this is why I was saying in this recent video about letting go of these conspiracy theories. My suggestion is just stay neutral. There may be some truth in some conspiracy theories. There may be a whole lot of untruth in them. But the point is, they're generally driven by fear. Conspiracy theories are generally driven by fear. It's this: we aren't being told the truth. So that sets up fear. And here's the truth. And that sets up more fear. So don't do that to yourself or your children. Stay neutral on the information in the world, because there's no use in losing your inner peace and your inner joy and your inner knowing to something that's just conspiracy, that's not even manifested yet. There are possibilities in the world that haven't come to your door where you have to deal with it. So stay neutral and teach your children how to stay neutral. Teach your children how to not let other people's negative energy change who they are. Teach them how to hold their their sovereignty when they're in these colleges and when they're in a hard pressure group environment where the children or the young adults are all acting out in one way. They're all having free sex or free drugs, or just, instead of reaching scholarly levels with their education, they're goofing off and they're making fun of smart people, and they make fun of spiritual people. You've got to train your children to be little spiritual warriors, to hold on to what they know, because the world is going to shoot them down, friends. The world will shoot them down. So you are their first line of defense. So you must now start taking control of your children and grandchildren as best you can. I know that, I'm in a situation where I don't have control over my grandchildren. Or you don't even have control over your children once they're out. But if you develop a strong sense of connection with them, when they go out, they have to test it on their own and work on their own on it, but they will come back to you as sort of a ping, like a grounding note in their life. Like, okay, I've been out here, there's a lot of mass confusion, I think I'm doing this, I'm not sure if I'm doing that, and then they may come back to you and kind of get recentered or regrounded. And if you can be their anchor, this is a great way to facilitate their growth as they go out and become adults. You're kind of an anchor point. You're not controlling them, but once they're out of your, direct guidance, if they are intuitive enough to have known the training that you have given them, they can come back to you for kind of a reassurance or a recourse correction. And they will also find other people in the world that can help them course correct. But we are preparing for a time where we are going to have a migration from this planet to new worlds. And this is going to be an exciting adventure. And it's coming. I don't know the exact date yet, but I have been getting guidance that this particular restart, this has been a dramatic situation in our lives, friends. The world has stopped moving in a lot of ways, and we are going to re-kick humanity's movement forward, and things are going to change and be different. So a lot of people are now open to adapting and changing and new ideas, and well, let's try it this way and let's try it that way. So it's a good time to start solidifying this second path that I've been talking about in the other video, previous video, where now we as adults start to master our spiritual skills, and we begin to train, educate, and help our children, because the largest migration is happening in the future. These children that will be coming in are coming in specifically for a migration event. There will be some of us who choose to. It's your choice. You have the option. You have the option where you want to go. And remember, I've always said, death is not a mystery. You can know where you're going because you can transfer your body, you transfer your consciousness into other bodies during what used to be called astral travel, but now you're bilocating into higher bodies. So you can know where you're going after this. You can also be one of those people who chooses to be part of the transition team or the initial setup team in the new worlds, so that you're already there when the migrations come. I mean, there are options for us to be connected to our family, possibly with these migrations, or to go somewhere else if we choose. So that's where I'm going to leave this video for today, but I want you to be sure and look at those videos on precognition, telepathy, astral travel, working with nature, healing, sacred fire, and put your questions down below so that in the next video we can get more specific about all those skills that I've put in the library, and I can answer questions and we'll get more specific on specific ones. So thank you for watching, and I will see you soon in the follow-up video.